So let us look at how the compilers deal with these two threads. There are many interleavings that are possible for the execution on the CPU. Basically, the compiler converts your C code or your Java code into multiple assembly lines, and now we have three interleavings that we're going to look at. In the first interleaving, thread 1 runs, and you start by loading the value of x, the value of x that is over here, that you're going to add a 1 to. You start by loading that value into register 1, and then you add 1 to register 1 and save the output in register 2, and then you store back R2 in X. So you basically load the memory location into R1, you add 1 to this memory location and store it, store the result of the addition in register 2, and then you basically save register 2 into X. So now X is updated and it has the correct value for basically for X, which is X plus 1. And then thread 1, the other thread, the thread 2 basically, the other thread starts running and it does exactly the same, adding 2, so you get a final result of 3. Another interleaving can be that you load R1 with X, and now the scheduler kicks in and you get evicted. The first thread gets evicted, and when doing eviction, as we know, you will have to store the values for the different registers, so that when you load the system again with these values, you have the correct values. So when you have an eviction for the first thread, you will save R1 into the PCB basically, or in this case the TCB, the thread control block. So you have R1 stored, and now R1 has the initial value of X, which is 0. And now you switch to the next thread. Now R1 is empty, and the next thread, the second thread, basically starts the operation all over from the beginning. So it loads R1 with X. Again, we have to remind you that the a CPU has a limited number of registers that are used by all different threads and all different processes. So it's not like you can have an R3 here. It's always the R1 and R2 that you're going to load and store from. So you load R1 with X, and then again you get the scheduler kicks in and you get evicted, and then you jump back to the first thread. The first thread coming back basically loads the value of R1 from the TCB, from the thread control block, and now R1 has 0. It adds 1 to R1, stores the value in R2, so now R2 has the value of 1. But then again, you get the scheduler, the timer interrupt comes in, and now you are going to store the 1 that you have for R2 in the TCB, in the thread control block, and empty R1 and R2, evict the thread, and now start running the second thread. And now you're going to, when you start running the second thread, you are going to load R1 with the previous value that you had for R1 for the second thread, which is in this case basically dependent on the first line on the right, load R1 with X, which was a 0 basically. So you are going to again add 2 to 0, and now R2 has the value of 2. And then again, you get a timer interrupt, you switch threads, you store R2, you store R2 in the TCB, you store the value in R1 in the TCB for the second thread, and you start running the first thread again. Now the first thread loads the value that it has saved already for R2, and in that case, it will be the value that is the result of the addition on the left, which was basically 1. So now you're going to store in X the value 1. And again, you get evicted. Second thread runs, now loads all the registers with the previous values, with their previous values, and in this case, R2 will be the value from the from the addition on the right hand side. So which was add 2 to R1 and store it in R2. So now you have 2 in R2, so you're going to store in X the value of 2. So as you see, this interleaving in the basically in the way that the two threads run will result in different numbers. So you will have for the first interleaving x is equal to 3, for the second interleaving x is equal to 2, and for the third interleaving, which is just a flip on when you store what you store first into x, you will get a final value of x is equal to 1. Now these race conditions, these things that might sound like they are not that they are just dumb, they are just stupid, but they actually kill people. So there is a famous machine that was used to administer the amount of radiology therapy, the amount of basically chemotherapy and radiology therapy. I think it was chemotherapy for cancer patients. It was called Therac 25, and it was a very popular machine. It was used in many different or basically hospitals and healthcare centers, and that machine was not the software for that machine was not developed to be thread safe, which meant that in multiple occasions these kinds of additions, these kinds of stupid additions, and the Therac 25 was basically calculating the amount of therapy, the amount of medicine that the patient will have based on his weight and his age and his condition. And the Therac 25 would had in multiple cases basically given people like 25 times and 10 times the dosage that they actually require and that is safe. So it actually killed people. It killed quite a few people. I mean, not quite a few, like hundreds, but quite a few. I mean, any life is a loss. So it killed a bunch of people basically by giving them, by telling the doctors, you should give them this much amount of medicine. And of course, I mean, if your doctor is sensible, he will look at these numbers and he will be like, this sounds wrong, and he might rerun the calculations thinking that it was him who was wrong. Probably hundreds of people got saved that way. But an unfortunate few did not. Their doctors basically did not question the numbers that were outputted by the machine, and they just gave these dosages to the patient, to the patients, and these patients, some of them died. So something as simple as addition, it might sound that, well, yeah, it's just addition. I can just use a calculator. Yes, you can, but if you basically get these numbers wrong, you might kill people. And it's quite similar, for example, when you look at planes, for example. I mean, the control algorithms for aeroplanes, you have to basically take into account you have multiple threads, you have multiple computers, and you have to coordinate between to make sure that the coordination between these different threads and these different processes is correct. You have a right engine, you have a left engine, you have the tailwind, you have the headwind, and I mean you have all these parameters that you need to take into account when you're on autopilot mode. So a minor mistake in that code, basically calculation that is wrong, can basically lead to killing hundreds of people, instantaneously, basically. So let us now go to a more lifelike example. So let us say that two people live together at home, and they have agreed together that, well, we both like to drink milk. We would like to always have milk in our fridge. If there's no milk in the fridge, this is a huge issue. We need to fix that. So at 12:30, person A comes in, looks in the fridge, and he finds that, oh, we are out of milk. So he basically leaves for the store at 12:35. He arrives at the store at 12:40. He buys milk at 12:45. But while he's at the store, The person B basically looks at the fridge at 12:40, 10 minutes later, and he's like, oh, we are out of milk, we now need to fix that. And he leaves for the store at 12:45, and in parallel to him leaving for the store, the other person was buying the milk. The person A basically arrives home, puts milk into the fridge, and at 12:50, person B arrives at the store, buys milk, arrives home, and now they have 2 bottles of milk. Okay, so something as simple as that you might want to coordinate, right? If you and your basically partner or your or the I mean, if you're sharing space, you usually have to coordinate these things. Well, we need to make sure that we do not both do the same thing because we do not know that the first person did it. So you need usually to coordinate cleaning, you need usually to coordinate buying stuff, and so on. So safety is that condition that never more than one person buys milk. Okay, so this is the safety condition that you have. So in thread terms, that never more than one thread changes a parameter, changes a variable. Liveness is that if milk is needed, eventually somebody buys milk. And liveness is basically how long. You do not want it to be too long. You do not want the coordination plan that you set up with your partner to be basically, well, we wait for 2 hours. We both wait for 2 hours at home if we arrive, until because maybe we meet the other person and then we tell him that we are going. I'm going to buy milk. I mean, no. If you need milk, you want it to come as soon as possible, basically. Mutual exclusion is that only one thread does a particular thing at a time. Okay, the critical section is the piece of code that only one thread can execute at once. And now we are going to introduce the concept of lock, which is basically a lock is what the name implies. It's something to prevent someone from doing something or accessing something. You want to lock before entering the critical section, so before you basically make some decisions that are critical and that can be simultaneously accessed by another thread. You want to make sure that you lock. You basically tell all other threads that this is mine, never change that. Oops, sorry. Oh, you guys do not see that. I just quit my yeah, I quit presentation mode. So yeah, lock is basically something that you raise or you hold before entering the critical section and before accessing shared data. And you should unlock when leaving after done accessing the shared data, because otherwise no one can access the data. So if you put a lock on your fridge, okay, if you decide that I'm going to put a lock on my fridge, and once I'm looking at the fridge, no one else is allowed to look inside my fridge, okay? And when you're leaving, you forget to basically leave the key on the table so that the next person who comes can open the fridge and check what is inside, okay? So you might end up in a situation where you're left with the key and that other person starves to death. And you should wait if the fridge is locked. So if somebody holds the lock to the fridge, let's better than a fridge, let's talk about a bathroom. I mean, if you're going into a bathroom, and this is a funny example, if you're going into a bathroom, you do not want to leave the door unlocked, right? You want to be, this is the critical section. Your critical section is now the bathroom and the toilet. You go inside. You do not want people to come inside and, oh, you're sitting. Oh, I'm sorry. Why did I see this? I mean, no, you want that area to be locked while you're inside. Critical section, okay? So during all that period, everybody has to queue outside. No one is going to basically jump over the door and tell you, yeah, I'm gonna sit here, right? So during this whole period, this place is sealed, it's locked. When you're leaving the bathroom, imagine that you have a key to the outside lock and you basically lock it and you never unlock it for people. everybody will just start queuing. You will go to work, you'll come or you leave work, maybe it's in work, basically, maybe it's at work. So all your colleagues will die because they need to use it, but you just forgot to unlock it. So that basically means that in some situations you want to lock the thing, no one should enter, should access, but once you left it, you should unlock it. So let's give an example. So one example would be basically to say to have a variable that's called milk, okay, and a variable that is called note. So you check a note, you basically put a note. So you basically open the fridge, you do not find milk. Milk is equal to 0, so now you're going to do something, okay? But while you're basically putting on your clothes, Jennifer calls and you pick up the phone and you stay on the phone for half an hour. In the meanwhile, someone else comes in, opens the fridge, and if milk is equals to 0, oh, there is no note that milk is that someone is buying milk, and now you go basically and write a note, okay, and you put it on the fridge. The same person who basically was writing